So today I'm going to be talking about Chapter 9. That's sneeze. You might see hiccup here in a minute and meet the family. But Chapter 9 basically talked about different forms of psychology and their modern versions of it today. So I'll be talking about counseling, clinical, industrial, organizational, and school psychology and kind of what they mean, what they do, and stuff like that, which is kind of interesting. I actually didn't know a lot about industrial or school psychology before this semester. Obviously, counseling and clinical psychology are well known. So to start, let's start with counseling to kind of break it up from clinical. Counseling psychology is that basic therapy that you see on like movies and TV shows, basically what everyone assumes psychologists do. So they are the therapists of the world. You sit in an office, you talk to them about things that you're struggling with. Normally people go to these individuals if they're struggling with mental health issues, so like depression, anxiety, PTSD, these forms of issues. The therapists usually use active listening as a treatment for these individuals, and the book basically described it as helping you understand yourself and self-exploration, and the therapist helps you do this. For clinical psychology, they kind of went more into the background of clinical psychology, which I kind of thought was interesting. For clinical psychology, it's said that it started out as more like basically they would create, score, and then interpret test results that they deemed important for your mental status. In the 1930s, it kind of went like there was a shift in clinical psychology from intellectual assessments to more so personality assessments. Our text mentioned that they used the Rorschach, which was the ink blot type testing for personality. They used a thematic apperception test, the TAT, and then the Minnesota Multifacet Personality Inventory, the MMPI. Totally said all those wrong, so sorry. And they use these a lot to help basically figure out your mindset, who you are as an individual, and helping you figure yourself out through that perspective. And then it also talked about how World War II led clinical psychology to more of a psychotherapy type approach, including behavioral therapies, cognitive therapies, things like that. Our text also stated that you'll find clinical psychologists more so in like state hospitals, child guidance clinics, and university counseling centers. To dive more into industrial organizational psychology, this one was one that I was really unfamiliar with. I've heard some students in the department talk about it, but it wasn't very prevalent in my education. But basically, it's more like HR stuff from what I gathered. So things like personal psychology, where you are basically dealing with like recruitment, job satisfaction, interactions between employees and management. That's kind of what I got off from Google in both our textbook. And then they also focus on like productivity and how to like make sure your employees are performing at the best that they can. That one's still a little confusing to me. I saw a lot of like safety aspects too. So like if you're in the workforce, how to keep like the psychology behind keeping them safe. That's kind of what I gathered from industrial organizational psychology. And then the last one that I wanted to cover was school psychology. So this is more related to helping students in school find paths and ways to excel as best they can in an academic area. So students with like behavioral issues or learning disabilities excel a lot from school psychologists. School psychologists specifically target those individuals and find a way to help them get the most out of their education. So overall, Chapter 9 was really, I knew some of them, but it kind of helped me dive deeper into different aspects of the history of all of these, and as well as industrial psychology. Never really came into contact with that one, so that was pretty interesting. So yeah, that was Chapter 9.